It's starting. Good. Yeah, you are recording the call now. So today I am introducing to you Antoine Masteriani, also known as Eternal Septenary, and he is really a good friend of mine, and we work together a lot, and we're gonna talk about our common work with Belial. We are working with Belial together in a common project. So how are you, Antoine?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I am also good. So, you know, can you like just tell us how you started working with Belial and what you kind of wanna say to start this conversation? Because this is really complex. Belial is really deep. So,
Well, the way I got introduced to Belial was through you. When I was going through a tough time, I was at the peak of my addiction with meth, and I was doing quite a lot of it, and I was being used by people around me. Um, I knew they were using me, but I let it happen. And you were getting in contact with me about something completely different with this. And one night, you rang me basically possessed, and said, "Well, you knew that I had a bunch of things in my house, a bunch of weed and meth, and you told me to burn it for Belial. And you're telling me things that you couldn't know, things like me nearly overdosing and not really knowing about it till after it was happening. And after we got off the phone, I burnt probably about a gram of meth for Belial as an offering to start working with him. And basically, that's how all of this really started off.
but like, what's interesting to me is so when you burn to Belial this form of an offering, so any form of illegally acquired good or drugs or whatever. What happens is he usually comes in a really raw primal form from my experience. But we never talked about how he specifically came to you when he consumed that offering. Uh, we never went into detail with that. So how it went.
Um, I didn't. He didn't physically appear in front of me like a few other spirits have. It was more of his energy just engulfed the room, and I started sweating. Like I started getting really hot. I started feeling like everything was sort of pouring out of me, and
Wow.
the whole room was being fed off essentially because it was filling up the room with the smoke.
Wow. So I need to tell you something. So I never told you like my side of the story, but I kind of will because the point of this is to be honest. The point of this is to be
Mm-hmm.
uncensored, and my personal work with Belial kind of started in a really weird way. I summoned Belial once to kind of just get to know him. It was around 3.5 years ago. And my first evocation of him was actually not an evocation, it was invocation. So I just repeated the chant with an intention of summoning him. It was a demonic can from Book of Azazel, Itaracha Belial. That N is the specific canon I recited. And as I went into deep recitation, he came into me, but he came really violently, and he was kind of trying to test me out. Will I resist? And I resisted. And he, as soon as I started to resist, he kind of went out. So the another introduction I had with Belial before I started serious work was I summoned him and I wanted to get money to meet some person. But that person was a scammer, and Belial kind of in a really ridiculous stream of events revealed to me that that person was a scammer and how ridiculous I was.
Mm.
The third instance, I tried to summon Belial. I summoned him, and then he made me some form of an ultimatum. And he told me, if you don't make a covenant with me, if you do not make a pact with me in 5 days, under the terms you already agreed before with me, I will kill you. So what I did is I did as he asked. I signed a pact with blood under previously agreed terms, and I did it in his presence. And then what he did next is he simply started laughing. Like I heard a really large laughter in my head, and his energy was pretty like, "What the fuck you did?" And he told me, "Look, dude, it was all a prank. I never intended to kill you. You should work with Lucifer right now." So that was my third introduction to Belial, which was also semi-successful. In the meantime, I called him to do many small things in between those introductions. For example, I was scammed by one person who isn't anymore in the occult community for a book. I ordered a physical copy and I never got it. So I summoned Belial in order for that person to return me the money. And result was extremely good. Not only that person returned me the money, but he returned me more than the amount of money I paid for. However, that person is not known to be honorable back in the day when the person was still in the occult space. So he wasn't known to be the person who kind of returns uh, the money, especially more money than you originally paid for the shit. So that third introduction also failed. And then after the third introduction, we are kind of coming to my current working with Belial. And my current working with Belial, actually, I never made any serious pact with him. I kind of worked with him for a time, and it was mostly regarding some family legal issues. Uh, but how it really became serious is I called Belial and I told him that he will be the main and only male patron on a demonic path for me. However, being an experienced idiot as I was back in the day, it was 2 years ago, I broke my promise, which resulted in Belial violently wreaking vengeance upon me by uh, worsening my health condition a little bit. And not just a little bit, it was really fucking up me. So as soon as I started respecting my promise and elevating Belial above other male demons, I got my health slowly restored and my power jumped. But as you can see, my introductions to Belial were extremely intense. And the last one, which happened only a few days ago. Uh, so you probably know that I have certain health issue, and that health issue makes me pretty. It makes me unable to move normally. So what Belial gave me as a task is he gave me as a task to symbolically steal minor thing every day, uh, which I did. And then I kind of went away with that, right? It worked really well. So I started thinking about stealing bigger things, right? Why wouldn't I not just symbolically steal, but steal actually really something of value, right? Something which can help me survive. So what happened when I started thinking about it is he kind of came in and he gave me a task to steal just one apple. And as I went to the grocery store to steal only one apple, he kind of came in and my body started hurting me extremely intensely. Uh, so it was a really short distance and I wasn't doing anything spectacular. So according to all common sense, it shouldn't happen. So I didn't steal the apple at the end because I couldn't physically do it. And then I went to the nearest spot where I could actually sit and converse with Belial. And what he told me then is he told me that I shouldn't think about physically stealing shit, that for my case, it's extremely only symbolic thing. And that I need to really push up my magic and force myself to be independent despite of the physical difficulties I am having. And it took me on a really long roller coaster of kind of becoming more independent, doing all of my on my own, and working with Belial on that. So the reason why I told all of this is because I wanted to kind of encourage you to reveal to all of us all of this stuff on this interview, because it's not
Mhm.
fair for just me to be uh, reserved while you say everything. It's not fair. I kind of opened a lot and I told some things which are not easy to say. So
Mm.
you can be free to do that too here.
Okay. So basically, the main two things that were hindering me with meth, which was the goal of working with Bilal to get off meth and fix myself up and get back my life and my freedom from that drug, was one, the pleasure of the drug, and two, my attachments with the drug. So, first step was to annihilate completely the drug being pleasurable to me, to make me want to stop actually ingesting it into my body in any form necessary. So, after we did that ritual of opening the gates and stuff, and you did a separate ritual for me, binding the Baal to meet and another spirit to feed off me whenever I would do drugs, um, and to help me through the whole fasting process. This is specifically after the whole fasting process, which was a pretty hard thing for me to do because I love food. um,
So here's the thing, like, can you start talking from a beginning, like the gate opening and everything? Because like for people to follow, just.
okay,
Uh,
okay. So at first was the fasting process to detoxify and get everything out of my system, not just literally, but spiritually as well. And then we opened the gates. After the 1 week where I detoxified, we then straight away opened 6 gates, and I infused my soul spark into all 6 of them. Even though Bilal said you don't have to, I still did that, and I opened them in specific locations that were high in traffic with people, like train stations, like in the middle of the CBD station, the city, and spots that I knew were rough neighborhoods that were mainly drug spots where drugs were being sold, where illegal activities were happening. So those actual illegal activities would further strengthen and feed the gates, and also protect those activities going around. And then, it creates sort of a self-sustaining system of energy to feed off.
yeah.
And pardon. Um, but after that, I did relapse, and the consequences were very severe. Every time I would smoke meth, I would become ill, like on the spot. I would go white. I would start sweating. I would feel faint. I would become. It was like something was wrong with me, and like I wanted to rip my own skin off, and which was not normal for me because I've been doing it for 5 years, since I was a little kid, since I was 14 years old, 15 years old, and it's never been like that for me. I've been able to handle it and actually enjoy it, and
Oh,
it's started affecting me very differently. And whenever I would do it, the people around me would start. It's like he would jump into them and start messing with me to get me actually out of that location and make me stop doing it. Like he was punishing me for going back on my promise.
yeah.
And it got to a point where that completely eliminated the factor of it being pleasurable to me at all. Every time I did it, it was complete torture in all aspects. And then after I essentially gained the motivation from that to stop wanting to actually do it, I stopped doing it for a while. And he put me in a position of power in that world. And when I say that world, I mean that scene. I started gaining contacts out of nowhere that were really useful. I started gaining the trust of people that would lend me drugs and stuff to sell, to make money, to support myself back then when I had no money, even though I wasn't using. And that was leading on to the second part, keeping me actually around the drug and tempting me to do it, which was my attachments, the money, the friendships formed through the drugs, because I actually did care a lot about these people. Even though they used me, they took advantage of my empathy, essentially. So slowly over time, he eliminated that factor by having these people treat me like shit, like I was worthless. Even though I was like their security guard to keep them safe while they sold their stuff, they treated me like I was a domestic partner almost. And it got to a point where I had to be put in a position to sink or swim. I had to sit up and stand up for myself and fight for myself and leave that situation and become completely independent from all attachments to anything in that scene, to gain the freedom I have now to not be anywhere near it and be fully independent from the drug. So it was like a hellscape almost, so to speak. And it's resulted in complete freedom from being restricted with that drug and any drug.
So, what's interesting in your entire story is that there is a pattern here. He tends to confront people with their weaknesses in a really violent way. In my case, violence is external. So whenever I call him to help me with my health or with any issue. For example, let's say I call him to help me with my health. There are two things which he does. The first thing which he does is he introduces to me a person who is like a friend, but an intense friend, like a violent person. You get what I'm saying? Who kind of pushes me to extremes in order for me to do what I need to do to empower myself. And it's really traumatic.
Yeah, it is.
And another thing he does is he activates my centers, my energy centers, which are below the root. So the energy center is located in the legs. And I am overwhelmed with animalistic rage and wrath, and it's a really difficult shit to control. But the thing is, he purposefully does it at times because when I am under those intense emotions, my nerves start going like crazy and muscles start contracting like crazy, and my body kind of cannot handle it. So whenever I do something he dislikes, if we are doing the path working, what he does is he pushes me through that extreme range in order to prevent me physically from doing what is bad for me. He uses this technique only when I do something I really shouldn't. And he started using this to me only when I swear an oath that I should be completely independent and that I should obliterate everything in my life, which is bad for me. So essentially, you and I, we are having the same experience. The only difference is you were addicted to meth. I was addicted to certain behaviors, but he used borderline the same methodology.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was
think
very.
keep talking, yeah.
No, it was very synchronistic, especially with the part of putting you with what you said about putting you in those situations with someone who's very intense and not really the best for you, even though they're a good friend. Because this person was a good friend, and this is towards the end where he was getting rid of my actual attachment, not the pleasure of the drug. This guy was really good to me. He looked after me, and I've known him for years. And I've never seen him like this. Never seen him treat me like this or anyone like this. He was putting me in really bad positions where he was going through psychosis and he had guns on him. So I was a dangerous situation for me to be in. And we got into an actual physical fight, me and him. And I ended up actually cursing him after the fight because it was over him trying to bash his little brother, and I stepped in the way and stopped him from doing it because I'm friends with his family as well, and I don't want people beating up their family and shit, So we got into a fight, and after that, I cursed him with Belial, and he ended up pulling a gun on his uncle, getting arrested, and going to jail. So, yeah, he taught me a valuable lesson to, no matter how much of a good friend they are, they may not always have your best interest in heart and want the best for you.
Yeah, because that's what's interesting is is that when you are like in a bad position, like if you have a really bad habit, or if you have an addiction, people who are your friends in that situation, they don't wanna you to come out of that situation because then you will not resonate with them anymore.
Exactly. They
So,
can't use you anymore. Yeah.
but not necessarily use you, but they are also in a shit. So
Mm.
if you pour yourself out of a shit, they all of a sudden get jealous, uncomfortable, and they want to pull you down again. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
So, like, can you like tell me what are you doing with Belial recently?
Um, Mainly, I'm working on my independence of staying away from people and not feeling emotionally guilty for it, because that's the main thing I have. That's part of the attachment thing, because I have so much empathy for people. I feel guilty when I don't go and help these people. It makes me feel like shit. And he's teaching me now to be okay with ignoring certain people, to be okay with having me time and going into a hermit mode for a week just to get out of this lifestyle and do me for once, you know?
Yeah, and I think like you are doing the right thing, Antoine, because when you are doing such a radical change, you kind of need to be radical and aggressive in your approach. Like
Mm.
if you become soft, you will return to the same landscape again because that's the way you learn to live. And the same is true for me. If I do not become radical in my approach, I will return to my own hellscape again. So the point of working with Belial is to really, he pushes you, but he pushes you in a way that will either break you and push you even further into the lifestyle you were in so you can kill yourself in the lifestyle,
Mm.
or you'll completely come out of it. That's his method. If you really want to go radically with him to kind of get rid of your BS.
Mm. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. But technically, like speaking, what I am interested in is this. When I work with him and he goes in a violent mode, right? You
Mm.
always get those weird, like criminal things happening in your life. For example, like a cousin suing you for nothing out of nowhere, or people coming to steal your stuff when it shouldn't happen at the place you are, and shit like that. So, and he kind of does this to you all the time in order to expose your weaknesses. So, like, and this happens kind of all the time when you work with him. There is always
Mm.
that literally criminal, lawless undertone when you work with extremely violent forms of Belial. So,
Mm.
that's my experience. What do you think about all of this?
Um, I definitely agree. He exposed my weakness because at the very start of all this, I was seeing a chick, and she wasn't using me at the start. We actually had a pretty good thing going on, but she was a dealer, and I was, hanging around her because I liked her and she liked me. And when I started working with Belial, a little bit before the actual fasting, when I burnt the meth for him as an offering, she started absolutely using me fully, like using me for my money, using me for my car. And I was like, okay, I know what's going on here, but why? Like, I couldn't figure out of nowhere why she had just completely turned like this. And it's almost like he was doing it almost to teach me a lesson, like to teach me to be more independent and not be so um, gracious with some people.
So, like, and what I also noticed is that a lot of people who work with Belial, especially females, and even many males, I see many of them, they like start working with Belial and then they like met an abusive person in their life or had an abusive person in their life. And they either never get over it or struggle with it. And like what Belial does is he kind of purposefully throws you into those situations in order to build your character. Like he will really throw you into all kinds of abusive situations. He will always find a way to put you into that situation, as ridiculous as it is. So what I suggest to you and to myself in that situation is to like focus on that Belialic rage, right? You focus on that Belialic rage. You allow your aura to shift. And what you do then is like you grow the tentacles out of your aura and vampirize the fuck out of people who are like trying to be aggressive. And you do it in a really animalistic, predatory way. And you do it as soon as they start behaving like that. Like, no shame, no pity. And also, what Belial does a lot of the time is he kind of helps you to get away with physical violence or with extreme forms of verbal violence. Like when you are bestially shouting into somebody's face, right? Or beating somebody up, right? So he kind of helps you to get away with that. If you get into that situation when somebody is like really a jerk and really a motherfucker, I think astral aggression and physical aggression are the only options. But in order to like get away from them, you need to do it right on the spot. Like you cannot go home and then vampirize them from home. No, you need to vampirize them right then and there, right? You need to show them the balls immediately. Otherwise, they will like.
You need to assert your dominance in the situation, definitely.
Yeah. And she kind of throws those motherfuckers on you all the time, and you kind of need to learn to fight. And yeah, if you refuse to learn to fight, he will keep repeating the cycle.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've definitely learned that he tends to beat you into the mud until you've learnt your lesson to be reformed into something new.
Yeah, and it usually takes the form of physical beating. So let's say, are there any like specific offerings Belial likes you to give to him? Like some of intimate details of your work with Belial.
He particularly loves brass knuckles that I've given him, mainly because what brass knuckles represent violence, especially in how they're used in the underworld, the criminal underworld. And he also loves weed. He loves any drug that you can get to offer to him, absolutely. But I find what he likes most is, in terms of what's a simple offering you can get anywhere around your house, is a mixture of cinnamon and coffee. I don't know why, but he likes that.
Yeah. And technically, the reason why he likes drugs is when you burn them, they release a lot of like heavy animalistic energy, and he likes that. And he also can teach you how to utilize drugs and other psychoactive and non-psychoactive opiates in sorcery. However, one should be extremely careful to not become addicted, because then if you become addicted, he will guide you through a really painful detoxification, which is, as you already know, more painful than the normal medical process, because he kind of increases pain on purpose in order for you to never be addicted to that shit ever again. But what I kind of had a problem with is I had the problem with being addicted to like mobile phone, but it's not like people say I am addicted to the mobile phone. I spend 1 hour on a mobile phone every day. No, I was like 11 hours on YouTube a day. So it was a really serious thing. When you are like having a health condition and you are sitting like 11 hours in front of a screen. So it's not like something naive. It's a really painful and dangerous thing, because if I don't exercise and I sit 11 hours a day in front of a screen, I am kind of in a position of constant pain and agony for 24/7, right? So it's like a really serious problem. And I used Belial to solve the issue, and it was intense. Let's only phrase it this way. So, what I kind of can share with the audience is this. So, how to create a special talisman for Belial. You buy iron handcuffs, and then what you do is you put them on the Belial's altar. If you have one in your home, if you don't, then you make an altar outside. I suggest not making altars to spirits indoors because it kind of forces energy to accumulate a lot, and it thins the veil in the one specific place and creates a poltergeist activity. And you don't want to sleep where there is a poltergeist activity all the time because there are probably other people around. So I would go into nature and then make a small altar to nature to Belial in nature, and then you offer handcuffs at top of that altar. Then you summon Belial. Then you light the incense at the top of the handcuffs, and then you tell him to consecrate the handcuffs through the incense, and he does exactly that. He infuses that energy of his into the handcuffs. And after that is completed, you take the handcuffs and you chain yourself with them. And then you invite Belial to possess you. And he enters. And then he comes and gives you a really violent and intense and ecstatic experience. And when that finishes, you are free to remove the handcuffs and throw them somewhere. So you symbolically remove all of your chains through this rite. And this is really potent and powerful thing, which everyone who is kind of a little bit more advanced in the work with Belial, they can use it. And yeah, did you like got anything interesting from him during your work? You definitely did, so you can share it with us, like something interesting.
What did I learn from him? I yeah. He he taught me a lot of things similar to Abaddon. He taught me a lot of harnessing my rage, my malicious side. He really brought forth this evil side in me, like this unforgiving part of me that needed to be put there, that needed to be brought forth. And he's taught me how to incorporate that into my curses, into my spell work. He's leveled up my baneful magic quite a lot. And it's hard to explain because with the brass knuckles as well, they can be used in curses. If you put them on and get a voodoo doll of the person, or get a link of some sort, or even their name, and put it in some bones or anything that you can smash into pieces, you can smash it to pieces with the knuckle dusters without hurting yourself, of course. And have that represent someone beating the living shit out of a victim, and they will mostly get the shit kicked out of them in real life, so one way or another, very badly.
So, yeah, but I need to kind of give my own interesting anecdote. We should be really careful when we summon Belial to not think with rage about something bad happening to other people in his presence. Because if you focus enough rage onto one person in his presence, he can like see that, and you can like curse the fuck out of somebody unintentionally. So
Definitely.
Yeah,
I know exactly
so
what you're talking about.
yeah, one dude like stole from me 150 euros, so not a lot of money, right? And I summoned Belial, and in the presence of Belial, I was like angry, and I accidentally think about that guy and something bad happening to him. And like next day, he like had a really bad car accident, and he almost died. So yeah, like really be careful in the presence of Belial. What are you thinking?
I've had something similar like that happen.
Yeah, but because we
I
like
was
talked about a lot about like controversial criminal side of him. Uh, I don't want this interview to sound like we are slandering Belial or like we are terrifying people from working with him. Uh, like I need to give one more anecdote. So he really tends to take care of women, of females. He really tends to take care of children, and he really tends to protect them even when they don't deserve it. So, for example, let's say some lady makes a pact with Belial, and he will protect the lady even if the lady isn't holding the pact. He will always be there to give protection and to uh, protect even if the lady isn't fulfilling her part of the deal. He's also really good in protecting children and property. So if you have somebody making an intrusion on your property, trying to fuck you over, he will really help. And what are kind of your positive experiences with him? Because we kind of covered him for almost 40 minutes, and we
Um,
told mostly about
my positive
Bestial. And
experiences with him, he is very liberating in very similar to Lucifer. He really, really loves to liberate those who want to be liberated and seek liberation. Those who are bound or have shackles on their wrists that want to smash those shackles off. He loves to help people smash those shackles off, man. Like I've noticed that a lot. And if you're worthy of his attention and you've passed his tests, he has a very protective energy, even for males. I find if he sees something in you, like if you're a warrior, if in that aspect, he will look after you in some aspect. Yes.
yeah, and what I noticed is like his mysteries are really, how can I say, socially controversial.
Mm.
So let's say you summon Belial to manifest you something, and he usually doesn't care how manifestation will be perceived by society. So, for example, if you ask him for a girlfriend, like he will send you one, but it can be like socially controversial relationship. Or if you ask him for like money, he will like open you a job opportunity, but it won't be some socially acceptable job. He seems to doesn't care about social norms at all.
Mm.
Uh,
That's that as
and
well.
this him literally true. Like, for example, if you work with Paimon, he will always give you some refined job. But no, Belial doesn't give a fuck. He like just throws the most controversial, lawless thing for you as an opportunity. And here is the thing. So there is one really interesting coincidence I need to share with the audience. Uh, so I summoned Belial and I asked him what I should be doing. It was like 5 months ago. 3 days after it, uh, water in my apartment goes off. Right. So we don't have hot water in the apartment, only cold water. And so we go to the uh, office to say that we have broken water in the apartment, right? And then they have a bureaucratic mistake, which like lasts for 10 days. And then like I can feel Belial's energy all the time through entire bureaucratic mistake. And Belial is known to expose corruption. That's one of his specialties, right? To
Mm.
expose the loopholes within a system. And then like I finally realized, wait a minute. So he is literally telling me to not rely on the state, to not rely on official social acceptance network of help. And he literally invites me to create my own para system. Uh, but he did it here in a really painful way. Uh, and entire thing was really, really weird. I mean, it's a too big of a thing to be just a coincidence. And I felt his energy through entire process. So one of the most difficult things I have when I invite Belial into people's lives. So when I, technically speaking, uh, work with other people and Belial on one issue, is that he always tends to bring those controversial ways of empowerment to them, and majority of people are not willing to take it. So I had one really interesting case. So uh woman was fighting for custody over her children, right? And then what happened is, you know, all of the sudden, friend of her husband started doing illegal shit, right? And I told her immediately, like, to win this case easier, you simply need to report them. But
Mm.
she didn't do that. She still won the case, by the way, at the end. But she didn't report them when they started doing illegal shit, right?
Yeah.
So majority of people, when that opportunity arises through the power of Belial, they are too ashamed to do something they consider outside of the social norms. However, he many times does those outside of the social norms things for a good end. He does it to like help the impoverished, liberate people, create more just and equal society. But means are always violent, means are always lawless, and means are always controversial. And
Mm.
it doesn't matter what type of transgression we are talking about. Sometimes it is not physical. Not every time it is people doing openly physical illegal shit. Sometimes it is casting a really painful curse or perverting certain information for your end or something like that. But whenever that is, it's always controversial. So, like, what we can do to like explain to people that doing those lawless things can lead to a good end, and that really Belial is a force which is needed in our
Mm.
human society. So, what's
Definitely.
your opinion?
I definitely agree. In it's all adversarial in the end. It provides challenge and evolution to the human life in all aspects, you know, mentally, spiritually, and sometimes physically. Um, Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, but like, how you usually invoke Belial? What's the technique you use for invoking it?
Um, I well, when I haven't worked the spirit before, I won't typically use anyone else's invocation if I can feel the spirit already around me in my life before I've tried to contact them. So I will set up some sort of altar, um, get as many offerings as I can, especially for the first time because first impressions are important. Um, I will meditate for a bit. I will raise my energy and raise the color of the favorite color of that spirit in energy in the room as much as possible. And I will chant their N, any chant or N I can find. I will vibrate that till I feel the spirit coming through me and changing the way I say the N to how they like it to be said. Like, for example, with Lucifer, when I invoke Lucifer, Renishtasal Baraka Biasarika Lucifer will have more of a hissing sound towards the end, where with Belial, I'll have more of a deep, husky, rough voice. You know, with Lucifer, I channeled the word Aravar in most of my evocations and invocations. With Balar, there's Bor, and it sounds very different, like Var and Bor. Like when I feel that coming through, I will surrender myself completely to the spirit, not out of submissiveness, but trust. I trust that spirit with my body, literally. And in doing that, it allows the spirit so much more grip over me and to influence me and come into me, on my end of the invocation, that is. And I will feel him come into me, and I will feel like a dragon. I will feel not like Lucifer dragon, but like a dark dragon, like a dragon of the darkness kind of thing. Like I feel this primal, almost gorilla like rage. Like I want to beat on the wall almost. And I feel
Yeah, yeah.
more grounded, like an earthy feeling.
Yeah, so what I kind of do is I kind of let him arrive, repeating the chant Vra Ta Belial, but I also use the chant Belial Niger Atavat, and the third chant I use is Ha Belial Ha Shadim. So I usually use those three, and I repeat them in a sacred space until Belial arrives, and then I tell him and ask him to possess me, and he usually does. It was never a full possession, so I never lose my consciousness, but it is partial possession. However, what I wanted to ask you is how your work with Abaddon is going. We can talk a little bit about Abaddon for the end of this video, because for whatever reason, Abaddon seems to possess me in the most violent way out of all of this.
Absolutely.
Only with
Absolutely.
Abaddon, I am at the edge of losing my consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there. Absolutely. My very first possession ever was with Abaddon, actually. He's the one who taught me most of my possession skills and opened me up for it. I will feel him enter through my back when it happens. Like my back, I won't be sitting in any awkward position. Even if I'm laying down, my back will just start aching like something is trying to claw through the back of my rib cage inside of me. And it's not like I'm resisting it. It's just like there's so much of this spirit to fit to enter into me. It can't all fit into me. And I will sit there and make these howling animal noises. Not like howling, but like I will just breathe and it's like there's a bear in the room. You know how when a bear breathes, you can feel it in the room. Like I'm breathing like a beast. And it's interesting because one of the most memorable possessions with him um, was when I got the most animalistic and I started moving around my room and clawing at the floor. And when I was clawing at the floor, I could see on my hands the aura, the energy of my hands was affected differently. Like it was turned into astral claws, and I was clawing sigils onto my floor. I don't know what the sigils were for, but whatever I did that day really did something and opened my possession abilities up.
Wow.
Mm.
Like, but here is the thing, I had that animalistic experience with Abaddon before. It wasn't to your extent, but it was something really similar. And here is the thing. So when that happens, you are kind of between conscious and unconscious. So you are aware what's happening, but you are not in control. And you are
Yeah.
barely capable of comprehending the download of information. And you are always at the edge of breaking completely, like going insane without possibility of return. So what I wanted to ask you is, since we kind of met through work with Abaddon, when you started working with Abaddon?
When did I start working with Abaddon?
Yeah.
2 years ago. 2 years ago, yeah.
And how it kind of started? Is it like just you?
I was meditating one day and his name came to mind, and that didn't usually happen. And then I sort of went out my way to reach my hand out, so to speak, to take his invitation. And then one day I had a dream. I was watching myself in this dream sleep in my room, and it went from me watching myself to looking at the doorknob in my room, and the doorknob was turning. And as it was turning, a voice in the dream spoke out loud, and it sounded like my voice mixed with someone else's voice completely. It was the most weird thing I've heard. And it said, "Should have kept the door locked." And when that happened, the door in my room burst open in the dream, and this swarm, it's just all this black stuff just came in the room and made the already dark room look like nothing. Completely swallowed me up and went into my chakras. And as it went into my chakras, I felt like I was being electrified. And I've been electrified before. It felt just like it. And I woke up like gasping for air and shit. And after that day, I'm like, yeah, nah, that was Abaddon. Definitely need to start working with Abaddon more. And I've formed a very close relationship with him ever since then.
Yeah, this is like crazy. I usually use magical chant Apollyon, Deon, Dianek to summon Abaddon. So technically, Apollyon is Apollo, but it's also Abaddon. They are technically two aspects of the same being. So by pronouncing and uttering the word Apollyon, you can summon Abaddon too, even in his more destructive forms, because Apollyon literally means destroyer.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Theon Dianek. And Apollyon is also really good for poetry and poetic inspiration. And he's also good for prophecy. He like open astral senses beyond any demon I worked with. So I have some other spirits who open astral senses to equal degree he does, but none of them are technically demons. The only demon who kind of opened my senses like crazy is Abaddon. He really knows how to do it.
Well, he is known to hold the keys to the abyss and be able to unlock all locks. So yeah, definitely he unlocks all potential through the abyss.
Wow. And when we talk about crossing the abyss, I need to say this. Like I performed the ritual to cross that. And Abaddon was the guide for that ritual, right? So what happened next is as soon as I performed the ritual, I went into deepest depression I was ever in. If there was a gun on the wall near me, you wouldn't talk to me right now. I would be dead for a long time. And I kind of always had those like episodes, but that episode with Abaddon was like the most difficult ever. And from that ritual, from passing through that specific experience, I became sure that whatever happens, I will never surrender, I will never stop fighting, and I will never kill myself. So that one single ritual with Abaddon kind of defeated my suicidal tendencies once for all. So I still have difficult times and I feel all kinds of emotion. But risk that I will kill myself is technically over. It will never happen.
It's yeah, that's interesting. It's like temporal death. You know, it's like gives you the mindset of you can't beat me because I'm already dead. You know,
Yeah,
kind of thing. Like an
yeah.
ultimate survivor.
And what's also interesting is Abaddon actually commands the souls of elevated magicians in demon magic. So he's kind of the prince of ascended masters. He kind of rules them more than any other demon in my experience. So
Yeah.
if you want to like speak to an ascended master, you summon Abaddon, and then you summon him not physically, but you summon him astrally, right? So you can just perceive his astral form. And then you light incense in front of him. And then you tell him to not manifest himself in the incense, but to bring into the incense the soul of one of the dead magicians who are sealed within the abyss. And he will do exactly that. And then the spirit of the dead magician will speak to you and converse with you. However, it is recommended for the brazier of the incense to be either made of human bones or of a complete human skull. However, if you don't have a bones and the skull, what you can simply do is consecrate the brazier for the incense with the essence of Abaddon before the ritual. So that's the small advice I have, which is kind of maybe interesting. What's like your spell you can share which involves Abaddon?
Let me think. I have a spell. This is a little technique that I use mostly for sour jars, and it's a technique that I use for multiple spells, and I will gather up all of my, because I used to be a very toxic person. I will gather up all my toxicity, all of my negativity, all my darkness, every single thing about my soul, my being that is wicked, dark, toxic, you name it. I will gather it into my stomach, near the solar plexus chakra, I believe. I will gather it, and in the astral, I will regurgitate this like a black puke that is acidic. So I will vomit this into my sour jar, or I will travel to someone in the astral and I will pounce on them and vomit this onto them, and it will burn them in the astral, and it will send them absolutely crazy. It will send them toxic. It will send them like a sour jar times 10.
Yeah, but I also need to say that not only is Abaddon extremely destructive, uh, and not only is he really good for opening of the astral senses, he is extremely good for healing, and he is a profound healer and a profound prophet and the enlightener, and he can be approached in that manner too. I used
Absolutely.
him for I used him for healing many times, and he was extremely successful. However, whenever you do the right with Abaddon, you need to be prepared for extreme mental stress if you want the right to be successful. So in the beginning, he will kind of come in a slight form, right? But later on, he will come in a more intense form. Uh, so when you summon him as Apollo, like in his Greek aspect, and when you ask him for healing, the type of energy you will get is beauty and power, which is so intense that it is so intense and so beautiful and wise and powerful that it almost breaks you. So it's intense as Abaddon, the demonic form, but in opposite direction. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're
So
saying.
definitely has that beautiful Apollonic, the divine aspect to him, which is not all about curses and plagues.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, if one can destroy, one can create as well.
Yeah. But like, can you like what's your latest work with Abaddon you can talk about? Because you cannot talk about current works, but what's your latest finished work with him? Like something which
Um,
ended.
um, my latest finished work with him would be working on this baneful oil I made. Um, I well, it's not even a baneful oil. It can be used for power ups and stuff as well. In any spell, it's a mixture of olive oil, chili, black pepper, more chili, cayenne pepper. I will get dead crickets and any dead insects I can find, and I will put it in the bottle. I got a dead lizard. I put that in the bottle as well because I found a dead lizard. And when I put it on his altar, he instructed me to invoke him and bind the actual spirits of everything that was dead, because there was a lot of dead stuff in this oil. Bind all the spirits of the dead stuff to the actual oil. If you can manage to get human bones, you can put it in the oil as well, like a little finger bone, and bind the soul of a person to the oil. That would be 10 times better. I just can't get
Wow.
human bones.
Like we're gonna break the internet if we continue this interview.
Yeah.
The internet for sure. But like I think it's a time for us to kind of end it. This was awesome. This was amazing, and I think everybody who watches this can like pick up something useful from the interview. In my personal opinion, like this is full packed with information about two really powerful spirits, and I am really glad I had you on here. So
Thank you. I'm
thank
I'm
you
really
for
happy to
coming.
be on here and have this opportunity as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too. You know, yeah. For the glory of Abaddon and Belial, let's end this and yeah, bye.
Bye.